I just want to, wow, there's so many faces. I'm delighted. It's sweet to have you all here. And those of you who I can only see names, sweet to know you're here as well. My name is Amy Ryan. For those of you who don't know me, I think I know almost everyone on the call. And it's really sweet, as I just said, to have all of you with us to just be in this place of discovering where we're at in the implementation phase and what are the concerns and the feedback and how can we do this process in a way that really works for all. So yeah, I'm going to take a deep breath. Invite anybody else to join me in that. Yeah, that's as much for me as anybody else. I notice I feel a little nervous. And yeah, that's because I can feel my heart beating. Yeah, because this matters a lot. And notice I feel a little teary. And what matters most is just, I think, the connection and the sense of people feeling heard in a way that they enjoy, and for this process to reflect the things we care so deeply about. That really matters to me. Yeah. Yeah, my tendency is to try to manage things, and I can feel that urge in me, and so I would just want to like sort of relax into the vulnerability of this moment. It feels more authentic, and that I don't have all the answers. But we can co-create them together if we don't. So just a little bit of framing. There are so many people on this call that I'm not going to do a full check-in. Just know that you are deeply welcomed, and I'm grateful that you're here. I'm not even going to do a full round of names because I think people are going to continue to trickle in. And if someone could continue to copy paste the notes document so that folks that are just joining can have access to that just as we go, maybe periodically, that would be awesome. So the main purpose of this call that I want to speak to is to hear feedback and questions about the plan, the implementation phase, the implementation council, where we're at, where we should be, where we're not, all of the above. And we hope that we don't hope, the implementation council has some questions and concerns we've already received up until now, both verbally through the trainer list and through our feedback form. And we plan on addressing some of those that we've already received. And then at the end of this little framing process, I'm going to open it up also to questions and concerns that you want to bring to this call. And we're not going to go into them in the moment, but I do want to harvest a bunch of them. And then we'll answer as many as we have the time for. And we'll have some more question and answer time at the end that might be a little bit less structured. But again, we'll have some questions that we've already received, and we'll speak to those, and then we'll sort of mix in the ones that you guys are bringing today live on the call. So that's sort of the structure. I'm just checking my notes. Yeah, I want to emphasize the spirit of this call, again, is like the sense of co-creation and collaboration, that it really matters to have everyone's voices in this process. And I really mourn. I didn't know how much emotion would be here. I'm surprised. I'm not surprised, but it feels vulnerable. I think it's added with all the faces staring back at me. Yeah. I really mourn hearing pretty regularly through the certified trainer list how much disappointment and pain there is from so many people who haven't experienced a sense of inclusion, who haven't enjoyed the way that this process has unfolded. Yeah, I feel really sad about that, and I'm learning from individuals throughout this process, just like how much of it hasn't worked, starting from the synonym process and even before. And I feel great sadness imagining the impact of that on individuals and on our community and on this process. And so I know there were many attempts to do something different, and nevertheless, this is what is. And so I think it's really important for us to sort of take a sobering look at what is and what are people's real experiences. And not that I'm hearing not everyone's experiences, but it's enough people's that I want to at least slow down on calls like this, and through taking in feedback in other ways to really take it in and be impacted by it. And so, I both want to acknowledge that here verbally and hopefully throughout the call, just like create a sense that your voice does matter. And if you didn't have a sense that it mattered before, like this is yet another attempt, deeply authentic attempt to include the wisdom that you're holding. And so I hope that we can do that today together. I do just want to have those, maybe because not everybody knows everybody, although I think this call is populated by mostly people who know each other. But I'm joined by the other implementation council members, that I'm not here alone, thank God. So Elke, if you want to give over a hello.
Hello, I'm Elke. I'm at the moment in Wales, and I'm really happy to see faces that I've only seen in the written word, I think, very often. So delighted to meet you all. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Elke. Jayanthi?
Hello, this is Jayanthi. I'm in the United States at the moment because I'm here visiting, and happy to see you all. Really looking forward to hearing from you and understanding what's alive in this group. I'm a little sick, so I might not speak very much, but I'm here.
Thanks for being here, Jayanthi. Roxy?
And hello, I'm Roxy, and in the U.S., and happy to be here. Very delighted that so many people are interested and curious about coming together to make this process work.
Thanks, Roxy. Uma, who is one of our, I don't even know, not an official implementation council member, but one of our admin members, and a coordinator and a collaborator with us on this process that's deeply invaluable. Uma, do you want to say hi?
Hi. I think it might be something that gets covered in the call. I'm technically, I think, in a role that we'll call contributor, which is not a decision-making role at this moment within the organization.
Thanks, Uma. Thanks for clarifying that. And we're also with Leonie. That's the last person I'll name. Leonie, are you? I know you're driving. I'm not sure you're on mute.
Hello, everybody. It's Leonie. I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. Welcome.
Thanks. And I saw a request to get the names of other people on the phone. So I see you can unmute. I see the 713-303 number. Who's that? You're unmuted.
Hi, I'm Bryn. I'm in Texas, and I'm wishing I had the link so I could connect through the computer and see your faces, but I couldn't find that link. So I'm happy to be on the phone, though.
Thanks for being here. I wonder if we could get Bryn the link. I'm gonna not tend to that in this moment, but if somebody else has a creative idea. And the 828 number.
Hi, yes, this is Nancy Swift. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Awesome.
And I feel fortunate. I just translated the UTC time in process, and so I just jumped on.
Thanks.
Happy to be here. Sure.
Everyone else. Yeah, so I'm just going to name a couple of...
I think more number on the list, 647?
That was Leonie.
Okay.
That was Leonie.
Yes,
Yeah. Cool. So I'm just going to name a couple of the topics that we have heard about that would be meaningful for us to speak to today, and then I'm going to open it up, and if people want to raise something, we'll add those to the agenda. So one is the relationship between CNVC and NVCO. So will CNVC exist in the new future, and how? So that's one. Another one is the sort of the topic of funding. So how is the Implementation Council being funded? What's the relationship of CNVC's budget and the new future process, and how are those being managed? Another one is the so can we stop this process now? So can we take a pause, and either can we or why aren't we putting a pin in it for a minute? And yeah, those are the main questions I'm seeing from our agenda, from our side, that we've heard are paramount. And I'd love to, either hear feedback, questions, or concerns that you'd like us to address. And if there are celebrations you want to talk about, we welcome those too. But yeah, I want to trust that those will get embedded in, but sometimes we overlook the celebration. So thanks for naming that. Somebody sent me a little chat. So the celebrations are welcome, but I do want to raise hands for whatever you'd like us to put on the agenda. And if we don't have time to get to it today, we commit to sending out some written material that answers those questions. So we do hope to answer all the questions that you bring one way or the other. And we'll do our best to get to what we can on the call. Okay, Karen S., I see your hand raised.
Hi, Amy, thanks. It might be included in one of these questions, but I am wondering how the IIT will be affected in the process.
Great, thanks, yeah. IITs. Appreciate it. Yeah, Roberta, you're on mute. Let me unmute you, hold on. I actually can't, it won't.
I unmuted myself.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Amy, I feel also emotional and vulnerable. I'm with you, and I'm imagining maybe lots of us do. And it's because what you said, it's so important. So thank you. And Karen Swift, please get in touch with me. I'm in Asheville also, and I don't think we've met, and we're about to have a big NVC community meeting here. Okay, so what I wanted to add, request adding is, are there some more strategies we could do at this point to create more inclusion? Because I have some ideas for that. Just saying, I definitely have a few thoughts when the time comes about the CNVC. So thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, this is Nancy in Asheville, and I didn't get your name, so.
The last person was Roberta Wall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll mute again. Bye.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks for that, Roberta. Are there others? I heard somebody take a breath. Yeah, Ronnie.
Yes, I'm I'm experiencing a great deal of pain over an expression that I'm seeing frequently on the trainers list now, and that is the tyranny of inclusion. I feel like I'm on another planet that has nothing to do with NVC when I hear that.
Yeah. imagine that's really scary. Like if the values that you hold so dear and the ones that have, like, you understand NVC to be holding so many, all the needs, how that fits in with something like the tyranny of inclusion.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Are there others that folks would like to put on the, anything you'd like to speak to or have us speak to on the call? Varen? Yeah.
Hi, Amy and everyone. I feel a bit emotional too, maybe a bit of anxiety about having my voice heard. I want to, I suppose it because there have been so many emotions expressed on the list and opinions about the New Future process. First of all, I want to celebrate that the whole of the Implementation Council is present today at this meeting. It must have required some quite coordination to organize this meeting. It's probably really, really early for some people living on the west coast of the States. And so for me, it's a demonstration of how committed you are as a whole council to really hearing what's happening and collaborating with us, the rest of the network, in finding solutions to this, to the disagreements or the unrest that's been expressed. So I want to really celebrate that, as well as all the work that I see is happening, although I know a fraction of it. And I actually want to come back to question 3, because for me that wording doesn't work. Why can we post the New Future process? I think I would like this question be framed as what would be gained to pose it at this time and what would be lost. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thanks so much, Fran. This will give another moment. Anybody else, if you're sitting on something that feels burning, can of course bring it in later. Just want to make a spacious moment for it now. Okay, awesome. If you think of something later, let us know or pop it in the chat. So the first one that to me feels meaningful to speak to, because there's been a lot of misinformation and confusion, myself included. My understanding has evolved around how does CNVC fit into the New Future. So that to me is a place that I'll start, and then we'll sort of go back and forth between the ones that we brought and some of the ones that other folks have named. So in essence, yes, CNVC will continue to exist. And it sort of depends. I've really appreciated the lens of, like, in what timeline are we talking about? CNVC is also, like, what are we talking about when we think about CNVC? Because it's many things. It's a legal entity. It's the functions that the organization performs, such as IITs and certification. It's the people who make the decisions and do the work. So that's what we think of when we think of CNVC. It's the office, the physical office, and the staff that works there. And it's decisions around and sort of ways of operating and organizing, how decisions are made and how work gets done. So those are different layers of what we now are talking about, and there might be more, but that when we think of will CNVC exist, what parts are we talking about? And so I'm going to go through some of those, and answer them as clearly as I can. And if you need me to slow down or back up, if you have questions intermittently, let me know. So CNVC as a legal entity will continue. So it will continue to, there will be a board of directors, and although how the board gets populated and the full spectrum of what the board is doing, the actual decisions that the board is making will shift, but there will be a board of directors, and there will be a legal entity called Center for Nonviolent Communication. The major functions of the organization will continue. How some of those functions are performed will change over time, but the major functions will continue. There will still be IITs. As many people know, the IITs are owned or were a gift to the Center for Nonviolent Communication and to CNVC only. And so that's not the only reason that the legal entity and CNVC is sticking around, but that's one major one, and it will continue in that capacity. So IITs will also continue. There will be new functions that also get included into what CNVC currently is and becomes. So some of the functions will evolve and some new ones will get added. The people working on behalf of the organization will, for the most part, have the opportunity to continue to do so. If they so choose, they are welcome to become partners within the organization. So the partners is the term of folks who have gone through an onboarding process and who are in the organization of NVC, that were the placeholder name of NVCO. And so for folks that are currently working at CNVC that want to be a part of the organization, they can go through the onboarding process, and we're working with them now to, and we'll continue to do so to find a timeline in a way that works for them to support them in that journey. And they can continue performing the functions. And one thing that I feel excited to name is that the hope is that the new structure will provide a ton more support and sort of balance out how many functions are being performed right now by very few people. As we all know, either personally or directly or indirectly, that the staff and the board are massively overworked. And there's a burnout rate, at least emotionally, even if they're still showing up physically. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And it's like a true hero's journey that they're going through, sticking it out and supporting this organization to continue. And one major goal that we're holding as the Implementation Council is to get people into the community and into the organization to support, to help offset some of what they're holding. So they can continue to hold what they feel excited to hold. And we hope to God that they don't have to continue to hold everything that they're holding. So the office itself, the space in Albuquerque, New Mexico, will also continue if the people that work there so choose. So there won't be anybody on high deciding that it needs to close now. If the people that go to work there and continue to go to work there and want it to stay open, then it will stay open. Yeah, I'm just going over some notes. So I think I want to pause there before because I could continue to dive into this question, and I want to know if there are any questions or points of clarification on this theme. Yeah, Ronnie, I see one from you.
Ronnie, you're muted.
Yeah. Oh, here, let me, okay, I've unmuted you. Do you want to start again?
I would love to have more clarity about the functions that will stay with CNVC and the functions that will go to NVCO.
Thanks. I can answer that, and I want to pause and see if I've heard my voice the most on this call, and there are others who have the answers that I'd love to just know if somebody else would like to speak to this. Nobody else wants to. Okay.
Actually, the premise of the question is a little bit misleading, because in some way NVCO and CNVC are going to be different names for the same thing. So it's not really meaningful to talk about functions leaving CNVC to go to NVCO. In some ways, NVCO is just the name for what CNVC is evolving into.
Yeah, does that answer your question, Ani?
It creates greater concern.
Mm. Do you want to speak to that concern? This would be a great time to do so.
Well, in particular, looking at IITs and what gets approved as an IIT, the IITs are going to be, and who the trainers are going to be, is currently held by CNVC. I see NVCO as having a much broader agenda that could substantially change what an IIT is. And so that's of concern to me, because there are limited funds. And yeah, so.
Can I reflect that back?
Yes.
Just to make sure I'm getting it. Yeah, I'm hearing like the concern around the integrity of these precious things that Marshall has passed on, these IITs, and wanting to know and have some reassurance or just some understanding that they'll be cared for in a way in the new NVCO, and as we continue in a way that they've been cared for now, that the integrity of them will remain intact and held by people who really get what an IIT is and can steward them in a way that you can really trust.
Yes, and I heard you say that the people at CNVC who want to continue doing what they are doing will be able to do that. And does that mean that those people, the people who are there now and making those decisions, if they want to continue to do that, will they be allowed to do that, or will other people substitute in for them?
Yeah, so I'm imagining you're talking specifically about the IIT-RT team, the IIT resource team. Yeah, yeah, who, as I've come to understand it, they see themselves as sort of serving at the pleasure of the board. So the board has sort of created this thing called the IIT-RT that is technically housed somewhere within the umbrella of CNVC. But just for clarification, for anybody else on the call, they're not staff members. They are hardy volunteers, and we just had actually a call with them a couple weeks ago, and we're grappling with like some of the how and the exact specifics. But there will absolutely be space for and the intention of an IIT-RT team in the new NVCO. And if the individuals who are currently populating the IIT-RT are excited to continue in that capacity, they also can go through the onboarding process of becoming a partner within the organization. And the exact way in which the IIT-RT team will be chosen, right now it's a little unclear. It's self-selecting, and the board sort of chose some, and over time, hopefully, we'll have a clearer process for how the IIT-RT team is chosen that's in line with the operational agreements of NVCO. However, those folks, if they want to move through the onboarding process to become a partner, they can. I don't know how the IIT-RT will be chosen in NVCO, and I'm not saying that because they might start as it. They may be the very first IIT-RT team. We haven't designed that process yet. It's a gray area. We will design it in collaboration with the folks that are most excited to be a part of that team. It just hasn't been designed yet. So if they're passionate about it, and if they'd like to be a part of co-creating both the IIT-RT team and the process for which those folks are chosen, we would love to work with them. There's not you're not invited to this party attitude. We just again had a call with them a few weeks ago, and I feel really excited to continue collaborating and connecting with them about holding IITs in a way that really work for everyone. And there will be an onboarding process for anybody to get into the organization to be decision makers, and that includes folks that are currently on the IIT-RT. And I see Elke's hand. I just want to pass it over to Elke, and then we'll see if we answered your question, Ronnie.
Thank you, Amy. I just wanted to clarify that one of the things I think that might be stimulating pain in general is the shift from one paradigm to another. So when I heard Ronnie say, will they be allowed to? This is what I would call the old paradigm thinking, that someone is somewhere above deciding what happens. Our absolute intention is to implement the plan, which was created by a large group of people. And part of the plan is onboarding. If I want to become a partner in the organization, I go through a process which is called onboarding. All partners in the organization have decision-making power. So there is no one to allow something to happen. I just wanted to speak to that because I think in my own learning process, this has been an enormously long journey. When I rejoined the Implementation Council in October up until now, to start working in this new paradigm of sense and respond rather than predict and control. And this idea that there is no one is deciding. We are deciding, I am deciding, and I ask for advice, which is the reason why we're hosting this call. I just wanted to shed light on that, and I'm complete.
Yeah, thanks, Elke. Does that answer, at least it may not be the answer you're most excited about, but does that answer your question, Ronnie?
Sort of, but I'll let it go for the moment.
Okay, if there's more lingering, I'd love to hear it again. I'm just gonna see if there's other questions. I see Uma has a.
Yeah, I just want to add one piece, which is there's a question arising for me from the discussion so far, which is what do people want the IIT to be? What has it been? What do people want it to stay? And the idea is that the process allows that question to be held by the IIT-RT group, to have all those discussions, to say, to suss out what is the essential piece of the IIT-RT, what is the essential piece of the legacy that the IIT-RT wants to maintain and continue. And it just happens within the container of NVCO, with people having joined NVCO as partners, and then using conflict transformation and feedback systems to have those discussions. So it creates a container for having all of those discussions. I'm hoping that adds a little bit of clarity. And I'm wanting not to forget that whatever it is you're wanting the IIT-RT to be, the space for focusing on that is the purpose, is the point of being able to be purpose-focused as an organization. Okay, I'll just stop there. I'm hoping that adds a little bit of clarity.
Thanks so much, Uma. Appreciate it. Yeah, Roberta, I saw your question in the chat. Do you want us?
Amy, I've also had my hand up for some time. I don't know if you're checking.
An electronic one. It didn't show up. It's not that I'm not tracking. I just didn't see it. I will call on you next, Karen.
I'm up.
Sure.
Thank you. I feel uncomfortable and mildly, I don't know, like almost alarmed at the idea of there being two different entities. I think it's coming from my experience in the history of different spiritual organizations where after the initial founder teacher passes on, different entities arise, and we've actually seen some confusion on the trainer listserv about starting different kinds of things. So I'm feeling nervous about this, and I want to urge us, and I'm willing to be part of the us, to really think of strategies to come out of this with one organization. And yeah, and I know it can be done legally. I am a retired lawyer, and I had a lot of experience in the not-for-profit world. So yeah, I really want to put that in the mix. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for yeah, I'm hearing like really like the simplicity and wanting things to be able to cohere within whatever like umbrella we're doing this work, to have this sense of togetherness, the simplicity both of the outer world and our inner way of operating.
Simplicity, clarity, and I think strength.
Mm-hmm.
Strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. I will just to say that for the short term and the midterm, anyways, there will just be one entity. So that's the sincere hope. There's that CNVC and NVCO will be two names for the same thing, and the only reason that we're having two names is to transition from using CNVC the name into something else. But it will be very much the same thing over time. There, in the long term, there may be other legal entities. The NVCO, the organization, and the partners there may choose to have other legal entities start, for example, one in Europe maybe, or one in the global south, to have both different ways of having employees or ease of receiving funding, or other needs that might be met from having sort of legal housing within different countries. But in the short term and midterm, there will be very little difference between, or no difference. It will be one entity. And right now we're looking at it at two entities in order to give language to what is and what will be in terms of structure, but they'll essentially be the same thing. Does that make sense? We're not NVCO specifically in the short and midterm isn't creating a new nonprofit. We're not becoming something different. We're just, I've really enjoyed Bob, who's supported us to write a bulletin that we'll be sending out soon that has all of this in writing. It uses the analogy of if we're in a new building, if we're in a building, for example, and we're wanting to move into a new building, we have an office and we want to move into a new building. We have two options. We can either leave this one building and build a whole new building down the block and create it from scratch, or move into a new building, or we can renovate the current building that we have and tear down walls and move things around and shift things. And we're doing the latter. We're renovating the building and we're moving things around and we're tearing down walls and we're moving the foundation a little bit here and there, but we're staying in the building. We're not trying to buy up another building down the block and have two organizations. We're staying in one organization. Does that make sense? Kind of. Yeah, these nuances, some of this might be more nuanced, and I'm just tracking the time. And so I want to call on Karen's raised hand, and then we'll go to another question.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so just between the difference of how you answered the question and how Bob answered it, it's two very different answers. On the one hand, I heard the separation that Roberta experienced, and then when Bob answered, it sounded like an absorption of the NVC. So there's still confusion there. I heard your analogy, and I guess I would really like to see clarity about the roles and responsibilities. And then, Elke, you were talking about the onboarding process, having no one allowing. Well, who's doing the onboarding? Who are the people chosen to onboard the partners?
You want to speak to that, Elke?
Yes, thanks. I'm just writing in the chat. The onboarding process is supported by groups of partners. I'm just wondering, let me just think if I accurately. I'm going to pass this one to Gently because she's been working on this. Gently, would you field this one?
I can. What we are doing is setting up the transitional partner onboarding. And then when we have contributors who have joined, we will be doing getting feedback from them and incorporating that. So it's an ongoing process. The onboarding process itself is going in stages and will be shifted according to the feedback that we get. So in that sense, yeah, go ahead.
So we, as the initial onboarding, it's you, Gianthi, Amy, Elke, and Roxy.
All of the implementation council members have input, but there's a group of us working on it, on different parts of it. So are you wanting to have names at this point, or are you wondering if it's?
Yeah, I would really like, because there's a division on the trainer list. And you know, Bob put this letter out about inclusion and equity, and I want to see if there's a balance.
Go ahead, Elke, if you're about done.
I just wanted to say that I think what's important before we address the details is that as the organization fills, we have transitional partners. When full partners are there, all the transitional partners leave the organization. This was an idea that I believe came from Doug. I'm seeing him for the first time since a year. That everyone leaves and comes back in. So the power that it looks like that we have now, because we happen to be the 4 transitional partners, we're abdicating it as soon as possible. And we're actually leaving the organization, and we will be onboarded ourselves by the full partners later on. I just wanted to make that quite clear. And I want to check, because sometimes I get confused between, my understanding around onboarding is that it's also a community event. And I just want to check that, because sometimes I get confused between onboarding and recognized weaves. I'm going to field that one to Bob. Bob, would you just fill in the details of that, just in case I say something?
Before you do that, Roberta, you've shared your, there we go. Thanks so much. Cool.
Bob, would you just answer that question? I'm just really nervous about saying something that's not quite accurate right now. Don't want to contribute to confusion.
So with all the screen stuff, I got a little distracted. What do you understand the question to be, Elke?
I understand the question to be who chooses, if I frame it that way, who gets onboarded. And my understanding is that onboarding is a community event as well. Would you speak to that?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the way that assessment is nominally a mutual experience. So if someone wants to be part of NVCO, they might be explicitly invited by someone who's already a partner, or they might just show up and say, hey, I'd really like to be part of this. So if they'd like to be part of it, there is a sponsorship step which means they have to find someone in the organization who agrees that they would be a plausibly good fit for the organizational culture, et cetera. But one thing to know is there are going to be lots of partners. So if it should be relatively easy to find someone who is alignment with you being in it. You'll also need to find a group, a weave within the organization who says, yeah, we'd love to see you join the organization. But again, there are going to be many weaves, including some weaves who have a function of focusing on issues of inclusion and access. So there's a little bit of selectivity, but there are a lot of people who independently get to do that selection, which should likely make for a pretty inclusive process. Then once you've gotten through that initial step of finding sponsorship, there is a learning process that one goes through as part of onboarding. And it amounts to really learning about the organizational agreements of how things work in the organization, how people are expected to participate. For instance, there's a commitment to conflict resolution and feedback. And once you've spent some time with the ideas of how things work, then you'll come together with people in the organization and maybe other people who are joining the organization, and you'll have conversations about, what do you think? Is this a fit for you? Does anyone have a concern about the fit? And it will be a mutual conversation. And if there's something that is kind of an issue, I trust that people will find ways to work through it in ways that make sense to everyone. It's very much a power sharing arrangement. So that's the general model of how onboarding works. And I'll mention that I see Barbara Larson on the call, and she participated in some of the design of this. We've got another resource here if there are questions.
Thanks so much, Bob. Ronnie, I see your hand. I just want to go back to Karen to make sure that, Karen, your question was answered, at least in essence.
Not really, but I want to hear what Ronnie has to say. Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
Yes, so what I'm understanding is that although it may not be likely, it's possible that a person who's been a certified trainer for 20 years or more might be considered not such a good fit for NVCO. Is that correct?
So the two pieces I want to distinguish are that I'm wanting to make sure we have shared understanding, and then we can speak to that more clearly, is there's NVCO, the community, which everyone is invited to be in. There's no threshold. Everyone can join. There's the onboarding is about as easy as saying that you're aligned with the vision, mission, and purpose of this work, and come on in. And there are weaves that you can create within that. There are topic weaves, so you could have a whole weave around the integrity of NVC, or you could have a whole weave around the importance of preserving the legacy of things, that you could have a weave around how disturbing the word privilege is, or how much you want to use it or not. You have a weave around anything you like, and they can be geographically based or not. And everyone's welcome to join that. For those people who want to do the work, so as if that you want to be, some people might get paid and some people not, but as if you want to work at CNVC, sort of like there's very few who do now, but as if you want to take on a role like that and be moving the organization forward in that way. It's a very specific, not now there aren't that many people that actually want to be working at the organization. We're hoping it's a lot more, and we're hoping to sort of shift some of the functions around so that it's more inclusive and more, maybe like, I hate to use the word appealing, but that there's more access for around decision making and what we're making decisions around collectively. So we're hoping there's a lot more people, but it's still, you're working in the organization, and to be in that process, to go through that onboarding process, to me, having 20 years of experience in NVC is certainly one of the things that might support you to have the consciousness and a way of relating to the operational agreements that will support you to be a partner, but that won't be the only thing. So there will be again this onboarding process to support people to come into the organization that are aligned with making decisions and collaborating and co-creating in a way that the operational agreements are pointing to. And some folks who have been sharing NVC for 20 years may be excited by those operational agreements and may be in alignment with them. And I can't speak for all of them, but some may not. And I can imagine if they are, that there will be ways for them to be onboarded and included just like everybody else. I don't have a sense that it will be harder for them.
My concern has to do with making judgments, evaluations of who can participate, because I think historically in organizations, people who don't fit, people who don't buy in to the organizational culture, who may very well have a major contribution they could make, are kept out. Because it's much more efficient to have us all agree and move forward. If we all agree and we move forward, then it's pretty smooth. We meet needs, lots of needs. But we lose something very important if we say, no, that one doesn't fit, because that one has something to teach us, almost always.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'm really enjoying what you're contributing. And I really would love to share that we're so deeply committed to harvesting the wisdom from what I might call an outlier in convergent facilitation. Deeply committed to that. And the new organization is constructed, the community around it, the organization in the middle, and through community interface weaves, there's a structure and a system in place to constantly harvest feedback from the community. And because the organization is there to serve the community on one hand and to reach out to the world in the other in a significant way. Mm-hmm. So I'm complete, actually. That's enough.
I just want to add one little piece that I'm really excited to hear what you articulated, Ronnie, because that's exactly, for me, that's exactly what happens in organizations that I think this new model is addressing. It's happening already. It has already happened within the way CNVC has been operating unintentionally, I think, for the most part. And what this model is offering is how to bring in all of the voices and how to create space for all of the voices to participate. So I got excited when I heard you say, because my world, the organization I want to be part of, is addressing all of those people who are kept out, intentionally or not. You were going to say something. I jumped in, so I want to let you have space.
Me?
Yeah, she was wondering if there was more that you were wanting to.
Well, I'm relieved to hear that you want to hear from the outliers, and I'm still concerned about the language good fit, because someone has to make that decision, who is a good fit and who's going to be a troublemaker, who might not be such a good fit. So I don't like the language good fit.
Yeah.
I'm excited as well about this. The fit has to do with standing behind the vision, the evolutionary purpose, and the mission. If someone is 100% behind that and signs up to feedback and conflict resolution, I want everybody in there. if there's a real shared vision, mission, and purpose, I think it would be a struggle to create any organization, whether I'm selling motor cars, if I'm not in alignment with the vision, mission, and purpose of that organization.
I agree with you.
So I think that would be the touchstone, Ronnie. I'm complete.
Thanks, Elke. Bob, I'm seeing you're wanting to contribute something, and I also got a message, Duke, that you've had your hand up, so I'll call on you next. Bob, did you want to contribute to this thread?
Yeah, just that I think that one of the main criteria when I say good fit, that was perhaps unfortunate shorthand. I think that the single most important feature in a partner needs to be ability to have a constructive dialogue with people. I had an experience some years ago in an organization where they said, let's invite in our worst critic and put them on the board so that we can have conversations about things. In this particular case, it turned out that this was someone who had significant mental health issues, which meant that they were not really capable of hearing what other people said or having any sort of constructive conversation about it. And it was so painful that it just didn't work to have this person on the board when they weren't able to talk about things, couldn't agree on facts or anything. And because the organization didn't have a good means of dealing with it, it basically all but destroyed the organization. So it's necessary to have some mechanism for discerning whether people can have the sort of participate in a useful way. I hope that these mechanisms will be minimally selective and will seldom need to filter people out, but it is necessary to have some discernment. If you're running a company, becoming a partner is basically a hiring process. It doesn't make sense to hire any person who shows up. And at the same time, there is tremendous value in bringing in diversity of opinion and diversity of perspective. So it's a delicate discernment process to sort all this out. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, Duke, I'm going to pass it over to you. Ronnie, if there's more there, I'd love to catch it in a moment. Just want to make sure. Getting some other voices. Yeah, Duke, over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think what I'm hearing Karen say, and maybe underneath what Ronnie is saying is, you know, who is creating the process, and are all voices being heard to create that process in the first place? And then what happens if, you know, like, if I say I want to be a partner, who decides that I'm not a good fit for a partner? Mm-hmm. I think that's what I'm hearing underneath all of that. At least that's what I think I'm hearing. So I guess if you could speak to that, if that does resonate for Karen and Ronnie, and I think I'm going to get that question, so I'd love to hear the answer to it too. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Duke. I wonder if Jayanthi or Elke, the two that I have a sense been working on this the most, want to speak to that.
Elke, will you start it off and I'll add?
Let me think about that one. Oh gosh. Why I'm a little discombobulated is something to do around with what I said earlier, this moving from one paradigm to another, and this thing around inclusion. I guess it's a sort of chicken and egg. And all I can keep saying is what inspires me to keep working in this capacity is the vision, the purpose, and the mission of what we're doing. And that's my constant reflection. So that would be my reflection. If someone would come to me and say, I really want to be in this organization, and you're in the weave and you're in the partner, and I want to come on board, and I want to keep Black Americans out of it for sure, and this and this and this has got to happen, I would have serious concerns. I'm just going to say it very clearly, yeah? Because I would be very surprised, and I would say, gosh, I'm really surprised. Would you be willing to tell me how this relates to our vision, mission, and purpose? Yeah? So my question is not about the person. It's about, would you tell me how this behavior relates to the vision, mission, and purpose so I can understand it? So that what I'm trying to explain is, if somebody comes to me and wants to be onboarded, the discussion for me, or the dialogue, is not around this person's personal traits. I want all sorts of qualities in the organization. It is about congruence with things that are said or done, or behavior with the vision, mission, and purpose. That's all I can say. And that's the foundation stone of any choice I make. And the old way, in my experience, has been in organizations very often to look at the CV. And I work almost exclusively in organizations, to look at the CV, and further actually not to talk about the vision, mission, and purpose. So, and this is a whole shift. The reason people would join this organization is because they're passionate about the work. That's what we would share. And if someone is passionate about the work and what we want to put into the world, then I can't ever imagine there being a problem. I'm complete. I don't know any other way to answer this question. Duke, does this answer it at all, what you reflected back?
So let me just see if I'm understanding you correctly, because I'm not sure I do. What you're saying is that the onboarding process will be some way of evaluating whether I'm in alignment with the vision, mission, and purpose of the NVCO.
It's a sort of osmosis process. So the first thing is to check the vision, mission, and purpose. And after that, it's actually absorbing the skills that we think are needed and that we've got research about that would be needed to work at this level of collaborative working. It's those two things.
Okay.
And yeah.
So if I say I am in alignment with the vision, mission, purpose, I like it, is that enough? Or is there some criteria that you're going to measure me by, and who is the person who's deciding that?
Yeah. I wonder if Jayanthi can, I want to be really clear that distinguishing, like the essence from what you're speaking to, Elke, of like, if you're aligned that you get to join, and who is making that decision? What is the process? That's what I'm hearing people are longing to understand is the actual, okay, great. Who's making that decision? Who's deciding to get to cross that threshold?
Well, it's two questions. Who created the process of onboarding?
Yeah.
And I think what I was hearing Karen say, and how'd you get input from people to do that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is it just you four? Is it 10? Is it 100?
Yeah.
Did outliers get involved in that process to create the onboarding process?
Right.
And then when it's in place, how does that decision make? You know, I go through the onboarding process. How does it happen at the end that you say, yes, I'm on board, or no, I'm not?
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm hearing being asked.
Yeah.
So in terms of the question of how it came to be, it was part of the early design of the NF plan, and got to us in through the integration phase. The process was pretty much set up, designed, how to do it, and then now we are working out the details of how to do that. And how you go through it is in a group, it's more of where it happens in a group, first of all. It's not one person that decides it. And there is a feedback giving process, and there are steps that's along the way. And I would love, can I invite some of the people that were involved in the early design of this, Barbara Larson, who is here, and Bob Wentworth, to speak of the early design part, and then we can talk about what we're talking about, fine-tuning. Barbara, are you willing to speak to this?
I am, and Bob, because I haven't really thought of it in quite a while. My understanding is it's, to be specific for you, Duke, other additional partners, because no one is a partner, really, a full partner yet. So there's going to be transitional partners, and I believe that is the Implementation Council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's these 4 here. And if my guess is that if you want to become a partner, there will become, it's already happening, I haven't been tracking, where you would reach out to one of these or all these Implementation Council transitional partners and say, hey, I would like to become a member. I would like to become a partner. And they would say, great. They would probably give you a document that says what the process is. And you would go through that process. And once you became a partner, you would be a full partner. And I'm guessing you and maybe other people who've gone through the process to become a full partner would then bring the Implementation Council members through the process so they could become full partners. So then you would have you and the other people who become full partners plus the Implementation Council who by then become partners. And at that point, I'm guessing that you all as full partners could look at this onboarding process and decide to change it, because it was developed by a subcommittee during the integration phase, and Bob and I were on that committee trying to give a way for people to become members to the best of our wisdom and input that we tried to get from other people and organizations. So I want to stop there and see if you have any clarity, Duke, or any questions for me.
Great. Let me just, again, reflect it back just to make sure I'm getting it. What I think I'm hearing you say is that the process itself of how to be onboarded was developed by, is it one of the original groups of 10 or 12 or something that came together?
Oh, good question. It was developed during the integration phase, which was
okay.
After all the working groups
okay.
Had their part of the plan. 1 or 2 members from each working group became the Integration Council and integrated all the working group plans into the plan. And Bob and I were members of that Integration Council, and we put our focus into the onboarding process, and then it was voted on by the whole council as, yes, we want this to be the onboarding plan.
Great, great. Yeah, and so that process came from that, what you just talked about, that group of people, right. The Integration Council. Okay, yes. Great. And then, yeah, then the process itself will happen, and that will be decided, you'll become a full partner, I understand, by initially from the Implementation Council people who are transitional partners. Yeah. And then if I become a full partner, then I'll also become part of that group for future partners if I want.
Yes, yes, and you can change the process.
Mm-hmm. Great. That helps me enormously to get more clarity about where that all came from and that. Thank you so much. I'm complete.
Yeah, thanks, Duke.
Thanks, Duke. So I just want to, so I'm just holding this process of this call. Elke, I see your hand up. I've seen Doug hands up. I've seen, I don't know your name, BB Hart is what it says on the name. I've seen your hand go up, and I see a question from Roberta, and I don't have a sense we'll be able to get to all of it within the next 15 minutes. We might be able to if we hold that those are the voices on deck. But Elke, I'm wondering if you want to add to this thread, and then I'd like to pass it.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that the onboarding process at the moment, The one that was originally designed has been fleshed out by the onboarding group, which I think Janthi is in, and Bob and Ava, maybe some other people. And when contributors come into the organization soon, we will be going through the onboarding that has been designed straight away. All the implementation councils will just be all going along together. So that's why there's a lack of clarity about who's going to be doing it. We're all going to go through it, and people have designed it now, and we're going to go through it, and we're going to collect feedback and that whole process, because it's a learning organization. And when new people come through it, they will give feedback, and it's a learning organization, and it can all change. There are no rules here. There are operational agreements, there are processes that have been inspired by the bigger process that we are implementing with a view to collecting feedback. And it will all change.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a rigid thing. It's not the old way. Complete.
Thanks, Helki. I want to just see if, Doug, if you have a question on this thread or another thread. And yeah, seeing another comment come in. I'll address that in just a moment. Go ahead, Doug.
Together, some disquiet that I hear about in the network relative to trust. And I know I have it. For those of you who don't know, I resigned from the Integration Council because I couldn't figure out a way to be in integrity with what I understood to be NVC values and to be complicit in what was going on. So the only choice after failing to try and influence things was to resign. So that's what I did. So there is a lack of trust. There was a lot of touting about this being a collaborative process, but you know what? Along the way, the Integration Council never went back to the CNVC board and said, you know, we're going to change the process here. How is that for you? So one of the cornerstones of trust didn't get acted on in the process. So I'm weaving that into what I'm going to suggest, which is if there was a sociocratic kind of election for the first group of even transitional partners that was put out to the network to sociocratically elect those people, I think the base would be broadened tremendously and the trust would be fed throughout the network rather than this being seen as under the influence of a couple of people who have been super active and vocal about the way things should be. And so that's my suggestion. That's a tangible, doable thing that I think would really help with healing the level of some of it's misinformation, some of it is mistrust, some of it is based on what people said and did during the Integration Council that has undermined that trust. So it's important to get that back. I'm going to end there, and that's my suggestion.
Thanks for the doable suggestion, Bob. And I'm grateful for you speaking to and once again taking in like the many breaks in trust along the way. And
could you just restate Doug's suggestion or proposal?
What I'm hearing Doug propose is that for the first round of transitional partners or an additional round of transitional partners, that happened through a sociocratic selection process from the wider network to invite people in to be sort of that some of those first folks. Is that what I heard, Doug?
It is, because at this point, I think it's imperative that we have people of standing who have broad accumulated social capital in the network to act on behalf of doing something that's really risky for a lot of people. So say what you will about CNVC, it has 20, 30, 40 years of history and a tremendous accomplishment and a reputation in the world. And we're looking at doing something that there is no history to this new organization. There's no history about whether people have actually followed through on what they've said they're going to do in the way that they said they're going to do it. So it doesn't have that. So we need people at this point to step forward or to be nominated. And I think sociocratically is the best way I can think of, partly because it spreads already the request for help throughout the network. And I wouldn't limit it, personally, I would not limit it to the CTs.
Yeah.
So there's lots of people that could be nominated sociocratically. If you want more details in this, I could provide them for you, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, but that's the general idea. I'll stop there.
Yeah, grateful for that. Thank you, Doug. There was a suggestion, Carl made a suggestion, thanks Carl, for possibly extending the time. And so my proposal will be to extend it maybe another 20 minutes or so. We'll start there. That will be another check-in time. Of course, if you need to go sooner or at the original end time, please do. I'm willing to stay on longer. So I'll at least be here to field the questions as best I can. And I invite the rest of the Implementation Council members to stay if you can, and to go if you can't. But I'd love to make some more space to hear some of these questions and concerns and answer some of the questions. So thanks for that, Carl. And Roberta, before you go, I saw BB Hart. I don't know your first name.
Someone needs to unmute her.
My name is Bryn Hart, and I'm in Texas. I was on the telephone, and now I'm connected to Zoom. I don't know how I pressed 1 to speak, but I didn't mean to. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Bryn. Okay. Yeah, and I just want to say, if we will plan to schedule another one of these calls, so if you can't stay and to include more folks, in addition to those who are here, we'll schedule another one. But I do want to, the folks that are here, and so if there are people who can stay beyond 8 minutes, I want to make some space for that. So just getting some other messages coming in wanting different strategies, and that's the one I'm proposing in this moment. It's the one I'm going to go with. So I just want to check if there are other hands up that I missed, possibly. Uma, I'm not sure if I saw your hand up on this last thread before we move on.
I did have my hand up, and I think the only thing I'd want to say is that the sociocratic process for selecting additional transitional partners is something that the Implementation Council worked on. And so, Doug, I would love to just be in touch with you both to gather your input, but also potentially work with you, because it's actually not off the table. It's actually something that's it's within the workflow of the Implementation Council currently to do that. And the thing that has developed in parallel is to also develop the onboarding processes and share them so that contributors and transitional partners know that even once they're selected, they know what the process that they would step into would be. It's sort of both steps and one and two at the same time. So I would just like to say that, and I'd like to be in touch with you if you're open to it.
Yeah, I'm open to it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Sure.
I thought I heard Uma just say additional transitional partners, and I wanted to check whether that was Doug's actual proposal or was Doug's proposal to sociocratically elect everyone who's doing, because that sounds like two distinct things.
My suggestion, Carl, at this point is to elect everyone
That's what I
sociocratically.
thought. Thanks.
And I would hope that some of the people, if not all of them, who are presently on the Implementation Council would be in that election.
And can you just clarify, everyone who is everyone in terms of being a part of this process, or can you just clarify that part for me?
As to who is doing the electing? Is that what your question is?
Who electing for what? To become a transitional partner or to become?
Yeah, to become the transitional partner. Yeah, I think we need the highest level of social capital at this point that we can possibly muster.
Great. And I'm just curious too, just from my understanding, and who will decide, put the proposal forward in the sociocratic. Do you have a sense? I'm just wanting to understand the proposal.
Well, in the spirit of those who feel moved to do it, rather than asking people who are less connected, I think that if people are, if I'm interested and welcome to put something together, and I would invite a few people who I think who have the confidence, understand the sociocratic election process more than I do, and have familiar, I would invite them to be part of it, and it would become like a mini weave just to do this, if you want to think of it in those terms. And then it would be adopted by somebody makes a decision about like, okay, well, we'll do it this way. I don't quite understand the relationship what was negotiated between CNVC and the Integration Council when the plan was supposedly adopted, because there was some collaborative type language that was expressed. So it's not clear to me about how that's falling out, but I would want to make sure that whoever thinks that they're affected, and this is in the spirit of the decision-making process, whoever thinks they're affected would be part of that group that's designing the process.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah. I'm seeing a note come in from Roxy that you're wanting to share something.
What I wanted to share was, it seems like there's almost a conflation of becoming a partner. And, like, yes, somebody could become nominated, could be elected, whatever, to become a partner. And part of the function of the onboarding process, which is to get alignment and shared understanding about how we work together. So even if we did like a sociocratic election, the function of onboarding will still need to happen to make sure that people are aligned and know how they're working together. So I wanted to differentiate between these two different functions. How do we include people, and how do we have an organization that is functionally effective in working together?
Thanks, Roxy. Okay, you just came off mute. Are you wanting to add something?
I just sent a little note to Doug privately. I have a concern, I notice, about the concept of social standing, and I get it. I do get it in terms of confidence. And my concern is about really wanting to build the new with a lot of the new. And I'm not sure if the people that we really want to include in this new organization are the people who have been trainers for 20 years. And yes, I want everyone in there. And I'm just concerned that if we go for social capital, will we be able to build the new with the new? Or will we be creating the new old? Yeah, I see Doug nods.
It's not social capital according to me. It's social capital according to the inherent benefit of a sociocratic election, where the people who are nominated because of the skill set and the standing that they have in the communities that are nominating them. So the orientation to the task about what this means, to me, has been pretty well articulated. And as you mentioned, Elke, I wrote an early draft of how to do this. So I think it seems very doable to me, and it seems to address the broader, or the part of the spice in the soup here is bitter for a lot of people, and I think it will help address that. It's like adding some. We just came from a Thai cooking class, so it's like adding a little sweet to balance things out.
So I'm wondering, just hearing that Uma's tracking, getting in touch with Doug about forming a little committee, and I see a hand up, Carl, so I'll call on you next. And I just, that maybe another couple minutes on this topic and then be able to take it offline for people who are excited to co-create this and then be able to answer some of the other questions. So that's, yeah, I just want to say that as like holding all the needs of this call, I'm wanting to eventually wrap this particular point up. But Carl, do you want to add to it? And then Roberta, I'll go to you next.
I'm seeing something so beautiful and pivotal emerge from these back and forth dialogues. And just in this latest iteration between Doug and Elke, what you're each saying, like, how do we hold this innovation tendency on the one hand and the bringing in of fresh perspectives perhaps, and at the same time to be honoring not just the history of the organization, but to, I'm just trying to find my words precisely here, that what I'm hearing Doug speak to, and that I do appreciate greatly in this sociocratic process, is a process where we empower groups to be reflecting together on who are the people who we see as a community, bringing in all the voices, who are people who we see as embodying qualities that we wish to have in these various roles, whether it's a transitional partner, whether it's the implementation council, etc. And what I'm hearing is there's some pain in the network and maybe some confusion, maybe it sounds like even quite a bit of perhaps lack of information about how is it that the implementation council is empowered in the way that it is at this time to be making these decisions, for example. And that I'd be curious even to imagine, we don't have to have a show of hands, but how many people are aware of who selected the implementation council? How did the integration council members, the working group members get selected, et cetera? How does all this chain of selection occur, or membership? And I have probably, I think I have my own understanding of what happened with all of that. But what I'm hearing in Doug's suggestion is, how do we make sure that we have a process that everyone has a sense of deep confidence in, that brings in multiple perspectives, and that that both balances the importance of recognizing people who are already acknowledged within the community, not necessarily as certified trainers, but as people who we know within our community, whether it's people we've had some kind of encounter with in a training, etc., or we have a personal connection with them, we see as embodying the consciousness of nonviolent communication, or whether it's people who we think bring a fresh and important perspective, let's say in relation to access, etc., or bring more diversity to the table. So at least what I'm hearing in Doug's proposal is something that how do we find, whether it's a sociocratic election, however it's held, I'm not going into the details here, but how do we find some way that our community as a whole has confidence and clarity that the process of moving forward is one that really holds these needs both for stability, integrity, and innovation, and these critical questions, in my view, critical questions of access and redressing issues of privilege that have really adversely affected the NVC network for so long. So that's just what I wanted to speak to. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for naming, synthesizing more of what Doug was bringing, Carl. Bob, I see your hand up, and I wanted to go to Roberta next.
Thank you. Big yes to how Carl laid it out, and to doing this as a system that is bringing in all, you know, the new and the old, and all the things have been talked about. And I also want to just add in as a need that I would love to see us meet, and that I think we can meet in doing some kind of a sociocratic inclusion practice, is creating a sense of inclusion for the hundreds of us who are in this passionate, it's our lives, and we don't want to get involved in the organizational stuff. So I do have some ideas for strategies that I won't raise now, but I just, whoever ends up doing this, I would really like to have an opportunity to give input, but how, you know, those of us who just want to be out there in the trenches giving our little trainings can participate without having to read all the stuff. I think that's also important for the kind of trust that we're talking about. I hope that's clear. I'm not going to ask for feedback because of time.
Yeah, thanks, Roberta. I just wanted to distinguish, I love what you're saying. It's so important for me to keep reiterating that what Doug and I'm hearing Carl and Elke speak to is the onboarding process into the organization, which is totally separate from what's happening in the community. The people, of course, as you're saying, in the trenches doing trainings and working and out there as practitioners, that the conversation that they're having is completely separate from that. That there's no threshold to be, there's none of this, the nitty gritty and the onboarding piece that they're talking about is relevant to the community. This is only relevant to the organization. One analogy I really have enjoyed, it's a little silly, but is if we think of it like Facebook. So it's easy to join the Facebook community. You go online and you type in your information and you're on the Facebook community. You can make events on the Facebook, you can have a profile, you can do all kinds of amazing things on Facebook, and it's easy. All you have to do is put your email address on and it's free to join. If you want to work at Facebook, if you want to have an office and you want to be a part of putting Facebook forward out into the world, and you want to do the coding and you want to help design what it looks like for everybody, you have to go through an onboarding process. You have to get hired to work at Facebook. So in the NVCO organization, what we're talking about with the organization is as if you're working at Facebook. Everybody else in the whole community who's an NVC practitioner and wants to be doing their thing, that's as easy as joining Facebook. You get to join into the community. You can start making weaves and doing those work, and it's absolutely wide open. And we're excited to integrate your ideas for inclusion into that, Roberta. But I just want to make it really clear, this distinction of the community, and the words can get a little, because we're using the word organization sort of flippantly in many different ways, and the organization, those are two different things. The organization is embedded within the community. Does that make sense? I just want to, no. Okay, we'll try again another time. I guess I'd love to know, actually, I want to pause. I'm curious what part of that is still confusing to you, Roberta, because this feels like a really important distinction to get.
This isn't Facebook. Really, we're doing something really new where that distinction doesn't exist, and feeling our way toward it. And I do get, and I feel a big celebration, I do get that it will end up that there will be certain people functioning in the organization and the rest of us in community, and we're all one sun, solar system, planet, and I get that. I'm not feeling confident about some of the other distinctions. And it could be because I don't understand it. There could be a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I'm hearing like some of the finer details are still elusive, and I'd love to know more of what those are. And yeah, in this moment, I'm going to take a deep breath. Invite others to join me if you want. So I'm at a choice point in holding the timing of this call and where we're at. It's 10 minutes after the proposed end time, and 10 minutes before the other proposal that I offered of staying another 20 minutes. I feel torn about opening another subject. It doesn't feel spacious. And I'm also mourning all these questions that we didn't get to. I'm so celebrating what we did get to in the voices and the proposals and the feedback. And so, yeah, I think I'd like to see if there's any last on this question of partner and organization and onboarding, if there's any other burning questions, to spend maybe 5 minutes of that, and then start to bring it to a close rather than opening a new subject. Yeah, Karen.
So to be clear, then the people that work at CE would need to go through the onboarding process.
Yes, staff will also go through an onboarding process to become partners in the new organization. They're not. It's not that in any moment they're kicked out. We're working closely with the staff to support them to come on if they so choose. Those that want to continue to hold the functions that they're holding.
Right, and in the note, Bob had said something about the way of operating, being in alignment with the authority, Terry. And so I'm telling myself that, convergent facilitation, or you agree on some kind of decision making, or, what is that exactly? This alignment with how to operate.
My understanding is what Bob's pointing to. There's a whole list, and it would be hard to articulate them now, but there's a whole list of operational agreements for sort of, how we're going to make decisions together, how the conflict process, the agreements around and commitment to a conflict resolution process. There are decisions around feedback, operational agreements around partners giving and receiving feedback from each other. So there's a whole list of operational agreements that support this sort of co-created design of collaboration that we imagine will support self-managing teams and a decentralized organization. And so because it's so different from a traditional hierarchical structure where you answer up to somebody and things are a bit different in terms of who gets to make decisions and how and when and what the advice process looks like and what that means, so we can have a shared language and a shared understanding of how decisions get made, for example, that even the staff will go through that process so that they have sort of the orientation and bearings of how are decisions made within this new organization. How do we give and receive feedback? And that is what I'm hearing Bob speak to in terms of orienting towards how things are done. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bob. And I'm wondering if does that give you a sense of, Karen, of? So
then I'm making another assumption. This current integration council has already been trained in these organizational procedures.
You mean the implementation council?
Implementation, sorry, yeah.
So it's a great question. It's one of the things that we're living into every day. So we're operating as if we're in the new organization. So on these operational agreements, and we're experimenting with them imperfectly, definitely, but we're learning. And we will support some people to come in, and this is how it is now, based on Doug's proposal and how things evolve from these kinds of calls. It may be different, but as of this moment, I can only speak to the Implementation Council and other transitional partners will help people come in, and then we'll leave and we'll come back out and we'll learn from the people who are then in. So it's not because we have the answers, it's because we're the experts. We've been grappling with it, And we also will, the people who are excited to and who have gone through the transitional onboarding process, they'll come in and then we'll leave and we'll get to come back into. And based on what Doug is offering, and again, what emerges from that, it might be a different process in terms of who those people are. Right now, the design is that it's the first transitional partners who is the implementation council, which is the implementation council. So that's the who.
Thank you, Amy. I have one last question then, because as I think we're all familiar that there's a lack of trust, as Doug pointed out, on the CT list. And there's so much focus in this new organization on conflict resolution. I'm wondering if we're leaning into this now, how we can remedy the conflict on the list before we do any more movement in the direction of NFP. I'm complete.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that question. It's something that the implementation council that we grapple with a lot, is how to support the healing and reconciliation that we're seeing, this divide and the pain that's emerging in different ways in the community. And I'd love to hear from my colleagues, other implementation council members, but how I'm hearing us continue to hold it is that the most hope we have is that can be healed both through this process, like this call, and the things that come from the feedback that we're getting. We're trying to have the process itself be part of that, and that the platform of the new organization can also support with that very healing process. So the both and I continue to be open to feedback if there are requests and other ways of doing it, other ways of entering the system that we could be doing it differently or more effectively, to support the process of healing and reconciliation. And as of yet, with our massively limited capacity, it's seemed to both be in integrity with what our role is, and to address what we're seeing in the community is to address as we go, and to continue to set things up so that the structure itself can be there to hold some of what you're pointing to, Karen. Yeah. And Elke, I'd love to welcome your voice.
I just wanted to share that I've been involved in a project now for the last 6 weeks as a priority, not actually stimulated or inspired by what's happening on the training list. It was on my list of things to do, to set up a transitional international conflict transformation weave, as it's essential as we get starting that there's something in place. And I'm also in contact with Duke and Sabina Geiger, who are also looking at ways that we can actually act now to support our community in staying together and healing any sort of pain that has happened. So the processes are ongoing, and we work with incremental steps. And I would have loved to have maybe been able to move quicker, and that the conflict transformation we would have already been up, and it's not. This is when I mapped it to happen 6 weeks ago. So we're starting that. Just wanted to create clarity about the work we do behind the scenes, which is just beginning to manifest.
And so what you're saying, Elke, is that there's a team of people that's gathering in order to address the very thing that you're speaking to, Karen. How do we, and I think Duke is on that, it was one of the folks on it, how do we support people to be empowered to do this healing and reconciliation process? And so the implementation council, we're seeing it as a way to use our role and use this process to bring people in to then sort of pioneer and champion that healing and reconciliation that you're naming. Does that, I see Doug's hand up, and so I'm just curious if that feels complete for you, Karen.
Yeah, for now. Thank you. Thank you, Elke.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, Doug, over to you, and then we'll probably close.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I could do this privately with Elke, but then everybody loses what I think is a big celebration. So, Elke, are you aware of the satisfaction that the UK team has in their conflict resolution system? Yeah, okay, so great. Sounds like you're in contact with those people, and I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thanks for sharing that, Doug. And just for others, that's just the UK community has a conflict transformation system that they're really celebrating, that they've shared with us as well, and Elke's in on that. So it's exciting. Again, getting to learn from the wisdom of what's out there. Yeah, Elke?
I just want to say I'm not in on it, but I'm in close contact.
But you know of it. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all sort of working together, and initiatives bubbling up all over the community. And actually what we're trying to do is sort of get some sort of structure and system in them so everyone's interconnected, so it can be as effective as possible. That's basically what implementation is about, trying to sort of harvest what's already happening, inspire things to happen, and move forward. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that last piece, I'll just close on that. Like, to me, one of the most inspiring things about the New Future plan is to create a platform to lift up what's already happening in the network. There's so much happening, beautiful work being done in the network, and wisdom that we want to, and these human beings that have so much to offer both each other and the world, that how can we have a platform, a way of operating that just makes it even easier and more synergistic and more collaborative. So to me, that's what drives me, one of the things that drives me to support this process, because I so want to make it easier for all of us to do this work in the world and to do it together in a way that really works. So,
and to be as effective as possible, indeed, in the world. That's my hope for the new organization.
Yeah, thanks, Elke. Yeah, and thank you to all those who showed up, to all those who spoke and asked hard questions and deeply meaningful questions, who gave proposals and ideas and reflections, who've given your blood, sweat, and tears to this process. And for those of you who have maybe joined and this is fresh and new to you, I'm grateful that you're all here. And for those who will be watching this call in the future, thank you for taking the time to make it through the call and continue the learning journey with us. Yeah, Elke, I'm seeing your hand up. Do you have?
I just wanted to say we have regular network calls. They're every 4 weeks at the moment, and they're posted on the CNV site. Uma is going to probably, if she can manage that amongst the other stuff she's doing right now, post a link into the chat. And we won't be with the complete team on those calls, so we may not be able to answer stuff. And certainly we can harvest stuff, and I'm guessing that's the more personal way to connect. So I invite you all to log into one of those calls.
Mm-hmm. And we also have our implementation council meeting calls are open, and those are on Thursdays. The time, we're all in different time zones, so it's on the CNVC website under the implementation council page. But those are Thursdays, those are open. You're welcome to join. We have the feedback form that's also on the website, and impc@cnvc.org if you want to send emails that way. So we want to continue to harvest the wisdom that's in this community and incorporate feedback, and nothing's set in stone. And that's by far the most exciting thing to me, is that the process is set up to include and to be a living and incremental step process. So we'll hope to have more calls like this in the not so distant future. And there will be some bulletins, sort of little mini essays coming out about Q&A papers coming out to answer some of the questions that we talked about here. So we're doing as best we can in this moment to address the longing for information and connection and feedback. And if you have other ideas for ways that we could be doing that even more effectively, we'd love to receive those as well. And we'd love to include you in the process. So there will soon be an opportunity to become a contributor and a member of the community. We'd love to have as many of you who are interested in joining that process to be in on that as well. So it'll be prototyping that mini onboarding process with us. So
I just wanted to share as well, Amy, that I'm planning and hoping to make little short video presentations of some of the written work with PowerPoints behind, so that within 5 minutes. So for people who prefer to see a face talking, there might be another way to access information other than the written word.
Thanks so much, Elkie. It's a big gift. And we're continually hoping to bring more visual aids to the different concepts in the the New Future Plan, because we know it's very wordy. And so we'd love your support if you're a graphic designer and know of any of those. That's also high on our list. We're wanting to make all of this information as accessible as humanly possible. That is it. I'll open everyone's mics and we can say our goodbyes. 1 second. Okay, everyone's unmuted.
Goodbye,
everybody.
Bye. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy, and
Thank
implementation
you.
council and people working so hard on this.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for coming, y'all.
Recording is on. Shall I turn it off?
Yeah, that feels complete.